Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 440, recorded live on Sunday, August 21st. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week, we have from DDO Players News, Draculetta.
Hey, how's it going, Patrick?
Great. Welcome. Nice to have you back on the show.
Thanks for inviting. Yeah, thanks for inviting me again.
Yeah, I should confess, really what I'm trying to do here is fish for an invite to your show.
Hey, I told you anytime.
Been I think it was on there once. You guys we're going to talk about it later, but you guys are almost up to 100 episodes, which is great.
We are, done. Yes.
You excited?
I am, actually, yeah. I'll be honest, I didn't think we'd make it that far, so it's pretty cool.
This week's screenshot. This is kind of a fun one. This is Sochan chills with his buddies in the 281st screenshot of the week. This is from 2 weeks ago. Because of the Ask the Devs episode and a little bit of craziness and me just deciding to push that out as fast as I could, I didn't end up doing a news segment for last week. Made it a little bit shorter, condensed of a show. So this is from 2 weeks ago. I know on your show you were asking about this, because there's the panther and the two owl bears.
Yes,
they are all hirelings, I would presume. There are two owlbear hirelings, just like the panther.
I didn't realize there was two of them. I just knew there was one, so I was trying to figure out.
Yeah, there's a level 17 and a level 25.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize there was two.
It came with the Shadowfell Conspiracy expansion, one of the levels that you could buy. I don't think it was the higher one, but the other one would give you that as a bonus. But that's what's going on there. So it's a nice little screenshot, nice mushroom hat, and I'm pretty sure that's in the Temple of Elemental Evil. Probably part 2 near Zugamoy. That's my guess. But it's a nice screenshot. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website at DDOcast.com. DDOcast is hosted by CyberEars, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be sometime next weekend, and you can stay updated by following us on our social media pages or our website, DDOcast.com. We have a calendar there. This week I was not overly great at keeping up with that, but usually I'm a lot better. And I was a little flimsy with the showtime for this one as well, and totally kind of behind the ball on a bunch of stuff. So there you go. We're going to talk about this week. We're going to be talking about Gen Con, because that was, 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
And then we are also going to be talking about Assault on the Slave Lords, which is coming in Update 32, and just DDO Players News. I thought it'd be a good time to check in with you guys, have you on the show. And then we've got 2 weeks worth of news to kind of catch up on. So we're kind of focusing on that pretty heavily this week, which is great because there's another podcaster here that talks about DDO news, which is fantastic. Look at how that works. Well played by me, I think. In any case, let's get started. So tell us about Gen Con. How was Gen Con this year, just in general?
In general, it was a lot better. They expanded the exhibition hall. The conference center itself did some remodeling, made it a little bigger. Gen Con also moved some of the stuff into Lucas Oil Stadium, so that helped a bunch. So there was less people, I think.
Less people overall, or you just mean less people per? Concentration of people.
Yeah, there was less concentration of people. The actual attendance that they released, their attendance it was up a little bit from last year, not a whole lot, like I think 2%, but it didn't seem that bad because it was spaced out more. And I think the biggest thing was that the conference center itself expanded, so that helped a lot with people. It didn't seem as crowded. I mean, there was, you didn't feel quite as claustrophobic as you were walking through the vendor hall as you did. I mean, don't get me wrong, there was still a ton of people in that vendor hall, but it wasn't quite as bad as previous years, and that has to do with, moving some stuff into Lucas and just having more space.
Yeah, that's more space is always nice, especially when you're talking about these big conventions, which we have PAX Prime out here in Seattle, and that thing I think has been in need of expansion for years. not so much, and I don't base that so much on like the actual density of people in the showrooms and stuff, more from the fact that tickets sell out in 5 minutes and have for a number of years. It's kind of ridiculous.
I'm kind of, in my opinion, I think Gen Con is eventually going to have to go that route and limit the number of tickets they sell. Because Indianapolis is big and there's a lot of room for stuff and there's a lot of hotels, which they need more hotels. But I think they're going to get to a point where the attendance is going to overflow even what Indianapolis can do. So I cannot believe they are not limiting tickets yet.
Yeah. How big is it? I think, did you just say? I don't remember. Because how big is the daily population? Do they have those numbers?
Well, see, what they do is they give turnstile attendance, which turnstile is anybody that buys a ticket for at least one day. They count in the turnstile attendance, and that was 201,852, which is up 2.5%.
But that was over all 4 days.
Yes, correct.
So we're easily talking about a convention that is larger than 50,000 people in a day.
Right, correct. Yeah, it's the average is about 6,819 people a day.
I should remember hearing many years ago. I mean, this was like 10 years ago, and I never like tried to check it. But in terms of conventions, like if you look at west of the Mississippi, there were only 5 cities that could hold a convention more than 40,000 people. And Seattle was not one of them.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. There's probably not many that could.
Well, the biggest issue isn't just your convention center size, right? And I think the reason why they limit PAX actually is more. It's not like PAX is saying we're going to limit this. It's the convention center saying this is how many people you can have in attendance. At which point we run into fire code issues and no one can move. So this is your limit.
Now, does PAX like spread stuff out into like surrounding hotels and stuff too? Like
a little bit.
Gen Con does. Okay.
To be honest, I mean, it's not an area of Seattle that I'm kind of familiar with it, but it's not an area that I frequent a lot. I don't tend to go downtown in general a lot unless I'm working there, and I work in the convention center occasionally, so I'm kind of a little more frequent with the convention center. But the convention center is there's 6 floors, but it's not a huge convention center. It's sizable. And there's some ballrooms that you can really link together, and you can get like the big convention floor actually crosses there's a sky bridge that crosses the street to the other side to an kind of I want to say a satellite building. It's kind of the same building, but they call it something different. I don't remember I remember the acronym. I don't remember what they actually call it. And then there's a Sheraton that's nearby, and I think there's a Westin nearby, but I haven't really ever heard of events using the Westin. I know several events use the Sheraton that's just a couple blocks away, which is a fun, interesting logistical challenge, actually, for that kind of stuff. Because, you know, these conventions take a whole lot of production gear, and the Sheraton, you can't actually back a semi into the Sheraton's loading dock. It's not big enough, so you can only... we call them, the term in our industry tends to be bobtails, but like little, not even 24-foot long trucks.
Oh, jeez.
Like you can bring those into the Sheraton, but you can't bring a semi in. So there's a lot of cross-loading of loads and weird things that have to happen just to make that work. So I don't know how well, and you know I've been there a few times, again for work, but it's not like a big ballroom hotel. Like there's a ballroom and some breakout rooms, but it's not really sizable.
That's the thing that I think most people, unless you go to Gen Con, you do not realize that for those 4 days, Gen Con takes over Indianapolis. All of the hotel rooms, all of their conference rooms, their ballrooms are all hosting Gen Con events. Like you can name the 6 or 7 hotels that are adjacent to the convention center. I guarantee you there was something Gen Con going on in that hotel. Most of the restaurants even change their menus. They redecorate, like gamerish for Gen Con. So it's like it's crazy how much Indianapolis just becomes Gen Con for 4 days.
Well, I mean, it's I think your guys' biggest event, their biggest event,
Yes,
right? Like
it is.
it's the premier one. We've got Emerald City Comic Con, which is also a pretty big draw, and then PAX, of course, which I think is slightly bigger than Emerald City. And I think again, the only reason it's slightly bigger is because they can't make it any bigger yet. They are expanding the convention center. There's also this weird thing with Seattle. And I'm sure this is true in other cities, but the few times I've actually like gone out of town to other conventions, I've been to San Jose and St. Louis, and the thing that struck me was when I was at the convention was the convention center was really big, but there was no nightlife in the area. They were both kind of these convention towns, and everything was structured around business, right? People went into the city to work, and then they went left to go home, and people didn't stick around. I remember being, I think it was in San Jose. Or saying one of the, maybe both. You'd get out from a session and at 6 o'clock, okay, time to go eat, and half the restaurants are closed.
Oh, good grief! You're kidding me.
No, it was actually a chore to find food.
Oh, good grief!
There's no.
That's insane.
Yeah, right. Whereas
that's
in
crazy.
contrast, Seattle is. I mean, there's like any given block has restaurants and apartment or condos. I mean, there's a lot of office buildings there as well, of course. But you could go down there at any time of day or night, and there's people wandering around. People live in the city, much more so than I think is generally true of like the really big cities, except not like New York kind of cities, but more business type cities. But that's my perception, having gone to like very few actual cities outside of my own in that kind of a fashion of exploring and looking at what the town is like, especially like a convention. Yeah, so let's go back on topic to Gen Con now that we've gone down that rabbit trail. So I want to know what was the best or the most interesting game that you hadn't experienced before that you got to play there?
That is a good question. I did play a bunch of games. I would say there was a game called The Dragon and Flagon, which is a board game where you actually build a cardboard tavern, and then you have a tavern brawl in the tavern that you build, and you are trying to destroy the other player's tavern before he destroys yours. And it can play up to like 6 people, so it can be just like this crazy huge, brawl. Just imagine like a big tavern brawl, but you're trying to destroy their, quote unquote furniture and everything that they've built. You actually build the pieces. You have chairs, you have tables, you have everything that you build. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I got to demo that. And that sold out. That was one of the most anticipated games of Gen Con this year, and it sold out within like 15 minutes, I think, on Thursday. It was gone. So yeah. And that's the thing too. There was another game I wanted to check out that was called Seafall, which is a new legacy game, and it's about basically sea exploration, and you discover new things, and then it's a legacy game, so you play it like 7 times in a row, and each game depends on what you did the game before, so it builds on the game before. That one I did not get a chance to play. I wanted to check that out. That was the most anticipated one, and that one sold out even actually before the exhibition hall opened, because Gen Con has what's called a VIG, Very Important Gamer, program, which people basically pay $500, and they get a bunch of perks. They get like a dinner, and they get like a swag bag, and then they get like a special room they can go in.
And they get like an hour on the floor before anyone else.
Yep, that's the biggest thing about it. And there's a lot of people that are getting upset about that, because what's been happening the past 2 years is most of the big, huge titles are selling out before the public can even get in to the floor because the VIGs buy everything.
I had the
So
fortune a couple years ago to be on the floor of PAX. Like I was there early because I had through a weird series of events. I actually got an exhibitioner's pass, so I could be on the floor when the doors
nice.
opened. And it was hilarious because people were like running across.
Oh yeah,
yeah. They could see the stampede. They're trying to get to like their favorite, the game that they most want to get to before the line gets there. It was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's people. I've tried to video that, but I have not found the perfect place to stand yet, to where I can actually get the most impact on video to see that throng of people just all at once, just immersing into one area. I mean, it's downright scary if you're standing there and you see like 7,000 people just rushing towards you. Actually, you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
When that happened, for whatever reason, so they on the end that they opened was all the the stuff that was really hypey was on the other side of the sky bridge from our convention center. So, and I happened to kind of be at the sky bridge at the time, so I could just kind of like stand next to one of the pillars, so I couldn't get run over. And I just watched the stream of people go past. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, it's amazing. But
so what was your favorite costume that you saw?
I'm gonna go with the easy one, and that was the one that was probably the most prevalent, and that was Harley Quinn. There were so many Harley Quinns, yeah. And it was Suicide Squad Harley Quinn, and then there was some of the classic Harley Quinn too, but I would say the most popular one was the Suicide Squad Harley Quinn, and there were just tons of those, and there was a bunch of Deadpools too, of course.
And then I think the last thing about Gen Con before we move on, unless there's something you want to add before we do that, actually the last question. Anything else you want to say about it?
No, just next year should be pretty interesting because it's the 50th anniversary, so they're gonna do some extra special stuff for that. So, all
right. So here's the last question I want to ask you at Gen Con.
Sure.
Speaking to people who have never been to Gen Con and maybe even don't really know what Gen Con is, tell them why they should go to Gen Con.
You should go to Gen Con if you want to be with a bunch of gamers that are just playing games for 4 straight days. And if you are into tabletop games whatsoever, this is where you need to be. It's like the geek mecca. And there is cosplay that we talked about. You can name any board game you can want to. Chances are there's going to be people playing that somewhere at Gen Con. So if you are a tabletop gamer, Gen Con is where you need to be, and especially next year because it's Gen Con 50.
Well done. All right, so now we're going to transition a little bit. Let's talk about DDO Players News a little bit. You guys are almost, you're what, 95, 6? Almost
98 actually is what we're on. Yep.
So you're really close there to reaching that threshold. Congratulations, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah, it's a great accomplishment. And there's actually been a fair number of podcasts that are revolving around DDO. I think you will be the second or the third one to reach 100. And DDO Cocktail Hour. DDO Cocktail Hour just got there. A couple weeks ago, and as far as I know, there's not another one. But there's been a number of podcasts over the years, but they haven't generally made it past 20 episodes. Even is kind of the Damsels is going really strong. And,
they're nearing 50, I think.
Yeah, they're right around there.
50, yeah.
That's podcast. That doesn't include like the YouTube channels, and there's a lot of like those kind of people that are doing. And they've, I think Voodoo's got like 300 different videos on his YouTube page now, or something like that. So it's not to say that there aren't people that have done a lot of content, but in terms of like a podcast that's kind of with like that weekly or semi-regular format, there's not a lot that have made it that far.
Yeah, so, and we've been weekly. I can think of maybe one instance where we didn't have a show that week. So that's like 100 episodes every week. So it's
that's
a
2
lot
years
of work,
too.
as you know. Yeah,
if you think
exactly.
About it.
And that's, speaking of 2 years, that's kind of funny. I just noticed today the site itself on September 5th will be 2 years old, and that's when our 100th episode is as well.
Yeah, there you go.
So
That
it's
means
just,
you missed 4 weeks in 2 years. That's not too bad.
yeah. So
I have missed many more than that in 2 years.
Yeah.
Actually,
It's easy to miss weeks, let me tell you. And there's some weeks when, at least with us, since I kind of early on in the site and the podcast, I kind of started slipping in, more of the Dungeons and Dragons tabletop talk. And then there was a span, and I can't remember between which updates it was, that there was just like no game news whatsoever. And I'm like, okay, if we actually have a podcast, there's like absolutely no game news. We'll talk about the Chronicle and we'll talk about the store sales. So that'll take what, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the most. So I'm like, do I really want to do with just a 15-minute podcast? So that's when I started kind of sliding in the tabletop board game stuff. And people at first, I think, were kind of like, well, this is a DDO podcast. Why are you talking about tabletop games? But then something happened, and I can't pinpoint what it was. It just exploded, and people are loving that we kind of do more than just DDO.
yeah, I've actually been kind of wondering if you're going to change the name.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, actually. But I'm not sure about that because I pretty much, have like this brand of DDO players now. So I'm like, do I really want to change it now? But that is something I've been thinking about doing, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. But we
started. I think when you started, you kind of go into that game review. You were kind of focusing more on Dungeons and Dragons like games, and now it's
right.
It's pretty much kind of whatever board game. And it seems like, if I'm reading between the lines correctly here, manufacturers are actually sending you games now to test.
Yes, they are. Yeah, that happened very slowly, and then all of a sudden, I did a Kickstarter preview for a game called Houdini's Poutini, which is a card game. And I did that preview. I saw the card game, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to send these guys an email and just see, because their Kickstarter was running. It was like, they were kind of in that lull in their Kickstarter where they were about halfway to their goal, and I watched it for a couple of days, and they weren't making any money. So I'm like, well, maybe if I get them to send me one and I do a review, maybe, I can help get them some Kickstarter. And I did that review, and after I did that, it's like the floodgates opened. It's like all these manufacturers are like, here, we'll send you this game, or we got a Kickstarter coming out. You want to preview this? And then I'm actually starting to get some of the bigger name companies to send me stuff, which is nice because that means we're actually kind of getting, quote unquote, known in the tabletop circle.
You might have to just make a new podcast about it.
Yeah, that's something else I've considered too. I'm like, maybe I should just split these off because this tabletop thing is going crazy. So, but we'll see what happens. But yeah. But it's nice now that we actually have game news. So at least, now the first maybe half hour of the show is DDO.
Yeah.
I try to do as much DDO as I can, but that it's hard to do. Well, I guess you're a little different because we're more of a news focused podcast. We don't, do like the debates and stuff like you do. So I guess it's a little easier for you, even on like non-news weeks, you could still come up with something to have a DDO focused show.
It's funny that you say that because DDOcast has often been known as the DDO news podcast.
Really?
Yeah, that's where the history is. It started out as a news show, and Jerry kind of interjected a little bit more of a kind of a roundtable thing, and Sig and Ann kind of went back and forth a little bit, and then when I got it, I kind of wanted to have, so I kind of made it. There's a news segment and then like a something else, like a discussion of some kind of like we're doing now. It's varied a lot over the years, or kind of from show to show. And then I started doing the debate show, just kind of. Have a little more interesting conversation about a bunch of different topics. A little bit shorter, but also kind of about contentious stuff, and to get people to kind of be a little more creative about some of the stuff that we're saying too, and kind of have a little more fun with it. And I actually stole that from another podcast that I started watching because I liked the concept. But yeah. So what else is? How did DDO Players News start?
That is like a really funny story, actually. What happened is I was previously we're on the network we're on is the Players Alliance, and there is a site that is Lotro Players that has the Lotro Players News podcast, and I actually started on that because I was playing Lotro quite a lot, actually, back then. And I was on that podcast with Pine Leaf, and one day before that show, we were getting ready to record a podcast. I just casually mentioned, it's like, I just started playing DDO again because I had played right when it went to free to play. A bunch of my friends started playing like a week before it went to free to play, and then we played a little while after that. Well, then all my friends left. So I played for a little while, and then I'm like, well, this is really no fun because I don't know anybody anymore. So I just quit playing. Well, one day and I actually continued to listen to DDOCast, and I just kept hearing about all the stuff you guys were talking about, and I'm like, well, I really need to install that again. So I installed DDO, I started playing it, and I casually mentioned to Pine Leaf, I'm like, yeah, I've been playing DDO. Have you ever played that? And Pine Leaf said, well, it's funny you say that. I actually just reinstalled that and started playing it again, too. So we just decided, okay, well, how about every Wednesday night you and I will take 2 hours on Wednesday night and we'll just play DDO together. Well, that's how it started, and then we kind of started talking about that, and then I got the idea. I'm like, well, the Players Alliance was looking to expand into other games and other sites. Eventually, we want to have like pretty much a site for every game that's out there. And I asked the lead director of the network, Dan Ding, I'm like, what if we do DDO Players and see how it works? And he's like, sure, I think that's a good idea because it's a, turbine property, so it should fit nicely because people know, the Lotro player side of it. So it's like, I think DDO would work. And we just decided to do the site, and I did it, and we did the podcast, and that's how it started.
Nice.
It just started how it's just some weird quirk of fate that we both started playing the game pretty much about the same time again.
Yeah, whatever works. It's kind of how it happens. Yeah. Usually how it happens, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was never this, grand plan I had to, have the site and this podcast and all this. It just kind of started slowly, and I just been kind of building it from day one and seeing where it takes me.
So before we move on to our last kind of quote roundtable topic, anything else you want to say about DDO Players News, including how can people listen to it?
You can listen to it. You can just go to DDOplayers.com, and that is, of course, the main site. You can see all I post news stories about tabletop games, Dungeons & Dragons, and, of course, DDO. And then you can click on the live button on there. We record the show Monday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So you can listen live and that's through Mixler.com. We have a Mixler page, which, if you're not familiar with Mixler, it's basically Twitch for just audio. There's no video to it, it's just audio. So that's what we use to record the show, and then they release on Wednesdays. You can click on the podcast button on the site, and you can get the podcast, and I do an audio version and a YouTube version as well. And I've changed the way I've done the YouTube version now to where whatever we're talking about at the time, you'll see pictures and/or a video on the screen of what we're talking about. It used to be just like a static image, and now I actually go and I edit the movie and everything together, which turned out to be more work than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But I noticed that the views went up after I did that, so I'm like, okay, apparently people like this. But as a side note, the whole concept of like listening to a podcast on YouTube is strange to me, but I've noticed, at least for me, a lot of people listen to the podcast via YouTube, so that's why I decided to do that.
It's a way to do it, that's for sure. I think people don't necessarily they kind of watch it out of the corner of their eye, kind of a thing, but I do. One of the podcasts I watch, I actually kind of pay attention to on YouTube, because it's a discussion format, but they're all in the same room, so you can kind of see them interact with each other.
Oh, okay.
But I usually like turn it on and then kind of occasionally look over at it.
And then, as we said, the 100th episode is coming up. That'll be on September 5th. That will be, of course, the live show that we record. So we are going to have some giveaways in the chat room for that. And then the next day, on September 6th, we are going to have a bunch of giveaways on the site.
Sweet.
I'm still not saying what I'm giving away, but I'm teasing it a lot, and I think some people have figured out what it is. But I will just give the standard tease that I give. The one thing we're giving away involves dice somehow, but that's all I'll say.
Nice.
And that will be just on the site. We're going to use a app plugin for WordPress that you just enter your info, and then you will actually get something sent physically to you in snail mail if you are chosen the winner. And we're going to have 5 of those, and then I've got 5 something else. And I think I just lined up 2 more things I'm going to give away. So
Cool.
lots of giveaways coming up, and lots of fun stuff, because we're nearing that 100 episode mark, which is awesome.
It's a great time to celebrate and give stuff away. That's for sure.
It is. That's what I thought. So I'm like, we're going to give away as much stuff as we can.
All right, let's talk about the Slave Lords, because I know you are an avid pen and paper player, particularly in terms of DM and party wipes.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
So, and this is I'd never played any of the modules. We always kind of did our own homebrew stuff. And I know there's a lot of players out there that play DDO but don't necessarily have a background in Slave Lords. So why should we be excited for Slave Lords? What is it about? What's cool about it? Why is it going to be a great fit for DDO?
The Slave Lords series actually came out in 1980, and it was originally created for a tournament that they were running at Gen Con that year. And it was a series of 4 modules. You had A1, which was Slave Pits of the Undercity, A2, Secret of the Slavers' Stockades, A3, Assault on the Area of the Slave Lords, and then A4 in the Dungeons of the Slave Lords. And DDO Turbine is actually only doing A1 to A3, which is a little disappointing because I think A4 was the best because it culminated in this big battle. But I can understand why they're not doing it, because at the beginning of A4, you started in the dungeons, you were chained to the wall, and you had no armor, no equipment, no anything. And I'm sure that would probably tick some people off if they started a dungeon with nothing on them at all. You were just in rags. So I'm assuming that's why they're staying away from A4.
It was one of the things that they mentioned, yeah. The technical hurdles of making that work and what that would look like, they kind of didn't really want to get into or weren't sure how to make it work well.
And this was one of those that it's... Back then, AD&D did this a lot. They kind of had like 4 story arcs that they combined together in like super modules. And if you played through them, it told a story, and the story would build. So it starts out that there is this coastal town that has been burned and looted. And then you were recruited to root out and destroy the source of all these people that did this raid on this city. And then in the process, you find out they are also taking all these slaves because there's people that were missing. And so your job is to go in and find out. So that's what you do in A1, and that's Slave Pits of the Undercity. And then you went into, if you survive that, you would go into A2, which you basically were going at the slave lords themselves now. You were, I'm going to keep this kind of spoiler free because I'm not sure how much they're going to include in this, so I'll be fairly spoiler light on this. But you go in basically on their home turf, we'll say, and you find certain other things out about them, that there's more to the slave lords than what you think there is. I'll just say that. How's that for keeping it spoilerish? And then A3 is Assault, and that is just a big battle. You find out where the basically leader of the slave lords are. You will go in through their dungeon. There is a castle that was involved that you have to storm. And then once you get in there, you actually find the leader of the slave lords. And then, like I said, stuff happens. You get captured. And then you go into A4 where you start in their dungeons with nothing. And then you eventually find your equipment and everything back again. And then it leads to this huge, huge epic. At the time, it was like the coolest thing that I have ever played in D&D. It was this huge epic battle that took place on the docks in Freeport. and it was just this huge battle, and something happened that leads into more modules later on. Something else comes, and you find out that who you thought you were fighting, you're not really fighting at all. So it's just one of the, it's been rated. I should have looked it up. It's always in the like, you know how people usually do like their top 10 modules of all time. Slave Lords are usually in a top 20 or top 10 list because they were very, very well written, fun. They weren't that hard. They were challenging for a party, but not too challenging. I mean, it wasn't like Tomb of Horrors, because Tomb of Horrors, of course, we know was just designed to kill people. Slave Lords was designed to be a challenge to a party. There was some puzzles you had to think about. You couldn't just, you know, run in and kill things. You actually had to think about what you were doing. So that's why I think it's one of the classic D&D modules.
Sounds fun.
And I can't wait to see what exactly how they incorporate it all. I did jump on Lamania. I guess we'll probably talk about that later. And I only did the first dungeon is the only one that I did, so I don't know. But from what I saw of that, I give them thumbs up. They are as true to the source material as they can be in a video game. You know, because there's certain things that they have to change a little bit because of the tech and everything they have. But I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, we had a discussion about that a few weeks back on a debate show about how P&P the game should and can be. So
yeah,
there are noticeable challenges translating a turn-based game into a real-time game.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And I give Turbine credit because I think they do a good job when they attempt to tackle, you know, the classic things, because a lot of these modules, people have like, can't think of how I want to word it. They like hold a place in their heart. They have fond memories of, you know, that was the first module I ever ran as a DM, or, you know, oh yeah, I remember that was, you know, the coolest weekend, you know, me and my friends ever spent back in the 80s running through this. So when somebody attempts to recreate that, you have that to live up to, and it's like, how do you please the people that remember it a certain way, and it might not have been, you know, the actual way the module was intended to be, but that's how they ended up running it and playing it. So how do you balance that? It's like, I do not envy Turbine for tackling that subject at all.
Yeah, it's a challenging thing to do because people hold, whenever you're dealing with something that people really like and have a lot of opinions about, you know, if you don't do it right,
yeah, you're gonna hear about it.
Exhibit 1, Warner Brothers and DC movies.
Yeah, but we won't go there. I have opinions, but I'll keep them to myself.
So some news broke this week, which is probably pretty exciting for most people. I don't really know who this guy is, but the news was that we were excited to announce that Travis Willingham recently wrapped up a recording session for Against the Slave Lords. Some of you may know him from his extensive animated resume, but others may know him from the Geek and Sundry web series Critical Role, where he plays the character Grog Strongjaw. He has more than 270 credits listed on his name, including many video games and shows you've likely seen or played. They're honored to have him to be our next DM. So what do you think about that?
It's awesome. And the reason why I say it's awesome, not because, I mean, number one, the dude is just he has so much talent. Have you ever watched any of the Marvel animated movies?
Not really, no.
Okay, he is Thor in the Marvel movies. So that will kind of give you a gist of his voice. And I know we were talking kind of before we started recording here that you don't watch Critical Role, but if you're a critter, which is what people that watch Critical Role are called critters, he just lives his character. So I can imagine what he's going to do as the DM. And he's got multiple voices he can do because he has a wide range. So I think, number one, that's awesome just for that reason alone, just the voice talent that he is. I can't imagine what he's going to do because I can almost guarantee you he's going to have a voice for every different character. everything will be the same. It's not going to sound like the same person. You're probably not even going to know it's him doing the voices. That's how much talent he has. But the biggest reason why I think this is like huge news, in which what I'm hoping, I'm crossing my fingers that's going to happen with this, is maybe we might get some cross promotion going, and he'll talk about it. Maybe Geek and Sundry will talk about it, and it might drive some new people to DDO, possibly.
That'd be fun. New players are always fun to have around. If for no other reason than say, hey, why don't you go pull that lever? Ding.
Yeah, exactly, which, as a matter of fact, happened to me the other night, but that's besides the point.
Excellent.
You can take a lesson for that.
That's the best hazing in DDO right there.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Like, you go first. Yeah.
But, yeah, that's a thing. I think out of all this, I hope that we get some, maybe new people, but at least we get some quote-unquote advertising out of it. Like Critical Role will talk about it, Geek and Sundry will talk about it, and maybe, those people have never talked about DDO before, so it'll be nice to get to a new audience.
Yeah, that'd be great. I got to ask you real quick, and then we'll move on to game news. What do you think you prefer out of a DM? Do you like someone who is really good at, like, they literally sound like someone else when they're talking in that character voice? Or do you like the more, so we say, the cry for help kind of DM where it's clearly the DM trying to do the act out the voices kind of thing?
I personally like the ones that you do not know it's the DM doing the voices. Watch either Critical Role, watch Matt Mercer, or watch Fourth Grade Giant Hunters, which is a new web series that is introducing the new storyline for D&D, which is Storm King's Thunder with the giant. But watch Matt Mercer DM, and he does so many voices. And if you weren't actually watching the screen, you would think there was multiple people there. And that's kind of how Travis is on Critical Role, because he does the way he immerses himself into Grog. I think he's going to do that with the Dungeon Master.
I'm kind of split on that because I remember when I first discovered the game, it was one of the things that I really liked was this, the DM voice was just real. I thought was really clever, and it wasn't so much that it was like amazing voice work. Not that it was bad voice work or anything, but it wasn't like you were watching a TV show and there were these. It wasn't Robin Williams, right? Like level of voice work. But I really liked it's the DM, and it's the DM doing the voices, which I always thought was really fun when they're doing those ones. So,
and when I DM, I try to do that, but I end up being like the cry for help type of DM though, and it's usually really bad, and my players laugh at me, and then that makes me want to kill them more. So I guess it kind of works out. Okay.
I don't know. You'd think with a theater background I would be better at doing that, except I'm not really an actor, more of a technician guy. But yeah, it's kind of fun to do a little bit of that role playing stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Knee Night, and the chat room was saying the class of Critical Role usually discusses their products at the beginning of each show. We should be able to see something in the next couple weeks, which would be great, as you were saying. I think with that, let's get into game news. And there's a lot of game news because a lot of stuff happened, and then because of the Ask the Devs episode, I ended up not doing the news last week. So we've got 2 weeks of Lemania news to go over, and there's some fun stuff here. So, first of all, Update 32 was on Lemania this weekend, and last weekend there were some dev events, which was great. They were doing those on Fridays, so they looked at the crafting specifically, and then last week, and then this week there was... you could go actually into the dungeons. Let's see. Some stuff was mentioned about cans crafting. So there's Voodoo had a nice video, which we'll talk about, kind of him looking at the crafting system. Some things that I noticed from new crafting stuff, which is kind of cool. Purified shards have kind of always been around in even the current crafting. I think they're going to be used a little bit more. You could turn in tomes for them, but you could only turn in +3 or lower tomes. Now you can go higher. I noticed that. And you can also turn in epic tokens for these purified shards. There's more ways to get those shards. No worries came in and let us know some of the updates and stuff. The challenge loot and rune arms aren't done. He gave us an in-progress look at the system. He also mentioned that Masterful has gone in all crafting, including challenge gear. I think because it was redundant, not because they were trying to get rid of it or anything like that. So this is what they're looking at. Actually, I think this is some of the earlier stuff. Look at what's going on. So trinkets have their slots defined, but the trinkets themselves aren't set up to be craftable. They haven't set up, at this point, challenge or rune arms. This is kind of before the preview, I think. The Mark of Cannith can be applied to add the extra slot. However, there was a bug where it was applying multiple times. You're only supposed to get that once. There will likely be some additional ingredients required for the minimum level shards than there is on the Millennium preview. And some of the stuff's not hitting everything like they want it to. And they hadn't implemented a mass deconstruction yet. It's still being investigated, and they also hadn't implemented ammo or the non-scaling effect, some of which I think were in the second iteration of Cannith crafting. Coco Majobo chimed in about some stuff on collectibles. In response to a couple of questions. One is, are collectibles going to no longer be house-bound but depend on nodes? What he's asking here is how they're spread out throughout the game, basically. Collectibles will not be house-bound. Collectible dispensers now drop any of the collectibles from their category. Internally, they're referencing them as arcane, lore, natural, or cultural. So this is based on what kind of a collectible you're actually pulling from will depend on what you're going to kind of get out of it based on those categories. And then it will also be tier-based based on the level of quest you're in. There are 6 tiers, basically every 5 levels is how they broke that down. Are they going to be added to Forgotten Realms? Which is yes. The only caveat to how he talked about how they're going to, or the breakdown or what's going to be dropping where, is that there will be some difference between Forgotten Realms dispensers and Eberron dispensers, mostly with the inclusion or exclusion of collectibles with lore-specific stuff to either campaign. He specifically mentioned Sorewood not dropping in the Forgotten Realms. And then they will be adding collectible dispensers to as many quests that don't currently have them. Both Forgotten Realms and ones simply made after collectibles were no longer used. That's kind of to be dependent on how much time they have to do that. They're going to try and get as many as they can. It's possible that not every quest will have them when Update 32 launches, but they eventually want to make sure every quest has some collectible dispensers, and the drop rate is not going to change. So there's collectibles. Are you much of a collectibles guy? Do you kind of keep track of collectibles?
I did at first, and I've kind of stopped, but now I'm thinking maybe I will again, just for the simple fact that I bet I could make some good money on the auction house selling some of this stuff.
Yeah, if you're not going to craft, for sure.
Yeah, well, see, and that's another thing. I'm not a crafter, but the more I read about this, and the more I saw, like I watched Tabudu's videos and stuff, I'm like, maybe I'll give this crafting thing a shot now. I don't know. I'm still on the fence.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I'm just thinking auction house for all these collectibles.
Yeah, there's the thing I'm liking about it is it's going to much more closely match random loot, which it really hasn't in the past, which is kind of one of the problems I've had with it.
Which, and I guess I never even thought about that it should, but that makes total sense that it should match the random loot system. So, like you said, that is a good thing that they're kind of gearing it towards that.
Yeah. So some more information about rune arms and challenge gear. For challenge gear, this is kind of a preview of what they're looking at doing. It does say that existing items are intended to stay how they are when the changes go live, so this will only affect new ones. Challenge gear. The current plan is simply have all those items be named gear that can't be crafted on, with everything they've done over the past year to bring in new consistency to random loot, crafted loot, and named loot. Having a side system that has several effects and can have the new scaling effects crafted on in addition is simply too powerful. This change would switch any effects that have scaling versions into those versions and leave any more unique effects as they are. It would also result in a Tier 3 items having a colored augment slot. And then Rune Arms said a similar issue exists with Rune Arms. Having 3 effects on an item, which can then have 3 powerful crafted effects added, is too much. The most straightforward solution would appear to be that the charge tier, the spell itself, and the Rune Arm imbue the minimum level and any very unique effects. And he specifically mentioned in Koronok, which is, I think, is the one that has to do with undead. Those would all kind of say the rest of the effects would be removed when prepping for crafting. Then you could craft on 2 effects or 3 using the Mark of House Cannith. The list of effects for Rune Arms is still being worked on, and then they asked for comments on that, which you can go to in the forums. The best answer, I thought, and I actually had this thought as well, was just put a third, just only be able to craft the 3rd slot on Rune Arms would probably be sufficient. Although, in fairness, a lot of the Rune Arms could use a little love these days. So maybe stripping them of all the not unique stuff might be a good option. Let's see. Lemania. So we'll talk about the release notes that came out for Update 32. And this is the 2nd iteration, so that includes some of the newer stuff because there's been 2 iterations on Lemania. Against the Slave Lords, new classic adventure pack ready for preview. The NPCs to acquire the quest are in the Hall of Heroes, which seems to be popular now for the modules, since neither Temple of Elemental Evil or I don't think Against the Slave Lords is in the campaigns we're in, right?
Correct. No, it is not. It's kind of like Temple of Elemental Evil. It's on a different plane, actually.
So Hall of Heroes is a good workaround.
Yes, it is. And side note for that too, I assume it'll go this way when Update 32 goes live. The Temple of Elemental Evil and the Slave Lords are side by side, but the Elemental Evil is not in the same place in the Hall of Heroes anymore. When I first got on Lemania, I freaked out. I thought my Lemania was broken because I'm like, Elemental Evil's gone. What's going on? But then if you look on your map, you'll see they moved it to a whole different section of the Hall of Heroes. So just mental note for you. I'm assuming that'll go if it or when this goes on live, if you didn't go on the Mania. So just remember that, and you won't freak out like I did and think your client is broke.
It would mean, and if I recall correctly, that the Hall of Heroes is not a free space. You do have to own it, which means if you wanted to play these quests, you would not only have to buy the pack, but also the Hall of Heroes, I would imagine.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I guess I just assumed that was free, but I didn't realize it was not.
I think it came with one of with the Shadowfell Conspiracy expansion, possibly. I think it's for your VIPs. I don't think it's for free. I don't think it's just a free space. That may have changed, but.
Well, I would assume if you would buy this pack, you would get access to that. I mean, that would make sense to give you access to the Hall of Heroes, you would think.
I don't know. They may have changed it. I don't know. But that I seem to remember that. Again, I'm VIP, so I don't tend to pay as close attention to some of that stuff.
Yeah, that's how I am, too.
Especially when I should. I should because I'm doing a news thing, but
exactly.
There's so many things you just don't think about, right, as being a VIP.
I'm in the same boat as you. I'm like...
I think it actually took me, 2 months to realize that it seems like free-to-play and premium players had to run over to the Fate Spinner to change their destinies around when I was just doing it on the fly because of VIP. So, let's see, other stuff. Character copy. We got to talk about character copy because the Lemania character copy has been... it seems like every other iteration of Lemania or every other update, character copy would break. And it was really unreliable. They have now integrated it into the Lemania game launcher, which is pretty slick. And it seems to be working a lot more reliably. Hopefully it'll work the next update. That's kind of, I think, going to be the big benchmark. But they changed how character copy works. You don't have to go to a website to do it. You do it right in the launcher, which I think is a great change.
And I did a video on that because I noticed in the forums there were some people that couldn't figure out how to get it to work and what to do. So on Friday, I actually made a video and released it Friday night on exactly how to do that if you still have questions on that.
One thing you still have to be very careful about is you can't copy a character over and then go back on live and take this really cool item and give it to another character and then copy that character. So if you're moving gear around that you're sharing between characters, that can fail your character copies. Just be aware of that. What were you gonna say?
I was going to say that very same thing, actually. So yeah, you just have to be, and you will get a message when you copy it over. It will tell you that your account will be inaccessible. I haven't actually tried it, but I think you can still log in even though you're doing that copy, but do not do that because, like you said, it could really screw things up.
Yeah.
And it, at least on Lamania so far, it doesn't take very long. I tested it at different times. I know I looked, I logged into Lamania and I looked and there was like a ton of people logged in because the dev chat was going on. So I thought, okay, this is going to be a good test because there's a lot of people on Lamania right now. So I logged off and then I copied like 2 characters over and it took probably less than 5 minutes.
That's great.
And other times I did it randomly throughout the day. And I think the longest it took was like maybe a minute. So it just depends on the server load, but it shouldn't take very long at all.
Other news, other release notes, parts. Skill tomes can be now be exchanged. This is a Lamania change, but now be exchanged for purified Eberron shards, which is great. Because I've got a lot of. I've noticed with this daily dice thing that I get a lot of bound tomes I have no use for. So
me too. Yep.
Being able to turn them in for shards, fantastic. Love it. Non-minimum level shards can also now be deconstructed, which is great. Paladin past life feat now lists its correct healing amplification. Lunabelle, in her, who I guess was an intern working at DDO, or at Turbine on DDO, went through and like changed a bunch of tooltips on her last 2 days, which was fantastic, and made everyone sad that she was leaving to go back to school. Some others, Pale Master's Cloak of the Night now clarifies it will reduce the amount of healing received from positive energy or negative energy if you are undead, which I always read that, but I can totally see. It never really occurred to me how that was not exactly intuitive. So great change there. There was some changes to elf enhancements, Fey energy tap, and the description as well to now say incorporality instead of concealment, which are 2 very different things. Pale-Master SLAs had their descriptions updated to include things like hit point costs. Sorcerer's Water and Fire Savant no longer ask if you are Warforged twice. The Arcane Archer Elemental Imbues no longer say they only do acid damage, which is nice. Other options are appreciated. Some other similar stuff to that, which I won't go into too much for. Merciful Shot now scales with range power.
Yay!
Which is probably a good thing.
A very good thing.
It was going off of melee power?
Yes.
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, oops is right.
It's not the first time it's happened. It's an easy thing to have goofed. Epic Destinies that grant range power now list the benefit in their Tier 0 tooltips. Players will now earn their proper rewards above 5,000 favor, which was just a +5 tome. I didn't know that it was broken, but not getting your +5 tome would be very sad. If that ever does, something like that ever does happen to you, submit a ticket. They're usually pretty good about making that kind of stuff correct. So you might have to wait a little while. The best time, if you have a character that you don't get the right favor reward, or you epic reincarnate and all your epic destiny is gone, or you're missing tomes or something like that from reincarnation, submit a ticket. But it's best to do it if you're going to be on that character for a while, or maybe you have some work to do on your computer. Log in, set that up, and then just kind of have it in the background, kind of pay attention a little bit and see. You have to be logged in on those characters for them to fix it, so that's a good way to get around that. Feats, all single weapon fighting feat tooltips now properly attribute attack speed to a combat style bonus, and Stunning Fist now has its DC listed in its tooltip. There are actually a lot of things that don't have the DC in their tooltip. That's kind of annoying. Implosion is a pet peeve of mine, actually. I have to look at Blade Barrier and then do math to figure out what my Implosion DC is supposed to be.
Who wants to do math?
I know, right? I actually enjoy doing math in these games, but let's see. Good, evil, chaos, and law damage effects now break DR. And there was much rejoicing because the new effects, when they transferred to the random loot, weren't doing that. That's a very key part of the game, is breaking DR. And pretty much all of the high-level content, I'm pretty sure every raid boss that's epic aside from the ones that were also heroic, they all have DR on them of some kind, I think. So being able to break DRs is important. Good is a very, very, very almost prevalently common DR breaker. So one note with that, if you're the wrong alignment, they will now give you negative levels, so be aware of that. Collectibles used in cannons crafting now stacked to 500. Hallelujah. Let's see, they fixed an issue with broken music boxes. Cacophonic Guard caused performance issues. This was like the repeating copy thing that they've been trying to get handled. They fixed some items that were showing string table errors during certain display conditions, and Spell Focus Mastery now works correctly. That's one of those things, like, I read that Spell Focus Mastery now works correctly, like, I didn't know it wasn't working correctly. Boy, if feats or abilities weren't working correctly, it'd be nice if there was a place to, like, look and check before I took them.
Yeah.
Epic and harder Hezrus, Umber Hulks, and Slod now have epic rocks and enjoy throwing them at you. I think just means you're going to take a lot more damage.
An epic rock. Who knew?
Does it have, like, glyphs on it? Is it going to break? Does that mean it's going to break epic damage reduction? Or are they just saying? I think that he's just trying to say that the rock's going to do more damage.
Yeah, that's how I read that. Yeah.
Let's see, Quest Adventure Airs. The Hall of Heroes has music changed, and also has new rugs. I don't know what rugs.
That's what when I read that, I thought there was rugs in the Hall of Heroes.
It's kind of a weird thing to add. But
I guess I gotta pay it. I'll have to pay attention if Lamania comes back up.
There better be owlbear rugs. And I still want to see like dragon busts or maybe like dragon skin rugs or something. That could be kind of fun. Let's see. The Gnome SLA DCs now state their DC is character level plus intelligence modifier plus illusion DC bonus. Let's see. Divine Punishment now has its max caster level specified. It had a max caster level? That's good to know. They did some more work to prevent lag caused by freedom of movement. Let's see. The help window will no longer reappear when a character exits a portal space. There is now a quest panel for Hall of Hero Classics, including Against the Slave Lords and Temple of Elemental Evil, which seems a little strange because that's like the only two, right? What are the other ones that are going to be in there? I guess there's more than one quest for each of them, so that kind of makes sense. Oh, they're talking about in your quest, not in the companion, the adventure companion with your favorite. They're talking about in the actual
quest panel itself.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Various quests had their tooltips in the adventure compendium fixed, and quests have been moved from the miscellaneous tab in the quest journal to their actual quest locations. Great. There's been a couple that I've been looking for. Examples: the Trials of Archons now appear under a new quest journal tab, Shavrath Archons, as opposed to the miscellaneous. Yeah, there we go. So that was the game news. And then there was, I wasn't really sure where to put this in game news or community news, or they just kind of threw this out on the, just kind of threw it out on Twitter. But it's a fun little shot. It's a screenshot of a quest in their like actual builder. Like in how they make the quest, and they're saying, "What quest is this?" Which was actually a really fascinating question, and there were a lot of answers. Did you have an idea of what quest this was from?
No, I didn't. I had no idea because I was looking at it and I'm like, that doesn't look familiar at all.
Yeah, it really doesn't. The best answer I had was Wizard King, because it looks like there's 3 towers that connect down to a bottom level, which is kind of the general structure.
Oh, yeah, I didn't notice the towers.
You can kind of see what looks like a ring going around.
Yeah, I didn't notice that the first time I looked at that, but you're right. Yeah, I see that now that I'm looking at that here.
I didn't see an actual answer. Wizard King was a popular choice. I think some people said the pit, but the layout just doesn't look right to me at all for the pit, because that's 2 shafts with brooms breaking off of it. So Wizard King is my guess. Also, I'm kind of bringing this up because, devs, if you're listening, these pictures are cool. Give us more of these. Yeah, I like this game. This is a fun game.
This was fascinating to see what, like a little peek at inside their world builder, as it were.
I don't know if there's proprietary issues they're worried about with it, but I thought it was cool. I liked the behind-the-scenes stuff. So
I did too. Do more of it.
Yes, please.
We like it.
It was pretty cool. Let's see. Bonus days this week. You can get +2 loot through today. If you're not listening to this live, it's probably too late. But you can also, it's a Champion Hunter week, so you can get all of the extra bonuses that you can buy through August 25th. So you have a little bit more time to do that. And store news for the week. Through August 25th, you can get 25% off of stat tomes, skill and UMD tomes, tomes of learning, all the tomes. You can get +3 tomes of fate. They're not on sale. Like, they're not cheaper, but you can buy them for a limited time through Thursday. You can also get 25% off of the Harper Agent Enhancement Tree, which is a pretty useful tree, particularly if you've got a character that has like 5 skill points or 5 enhancement points left to spend. It should be really nice low-level investments. And some people really like going all the way up the tree. See, the freebie for the week. Gold Seal Elixirs of Lesser Healing, 10 of them with the code HEALS4ME. The 4 is actually the number 4, not spelled out. And that takes us to community news, which, again, there's 2 weeks of this, so we get 2 chronicles. Woohoo! So the 201st Chronicle, City offered some basic advice for brand new players, and DDO Gamer created an explosive GIF. Is it GIF or GIF?
I say GIF.
All right.
But that's a whole other rabbit trail we could go down trying to figure that out.
The guild for 2 weeks ago, the Sacred Order of the Azure Flame, an Argonestan-based guild looking for people who take pride in making sure the party succeeds. The guild has a stocked airship, offers support for new players, and has a strong leadership team. If you're one of those new players that has come to us from Geek and Sundry or Critical Role, and you somehow found this podcast this quickly, look at the back issues of the Chronicle, and look at the guild hall. You can find a lot of guilds and maybe find one. The comment for the week, do wizards wear sunscreen, and would it impact their casting ability? Well, if they're smart, I would say yes, unless they memorize a spell that they want to cast every some number of hours to protect them from the sun. I can't imagine it would impact their casting ability because it doesn't impact me from doing anything when I wear sunscreen.
I would say the only way it would impact their casting ability is if they're doing a lot of fireballs and they put too much on their hands.
That could be problematic. Although that really gets into a rabbit trail of when they shoot the fireball and you've got the bead that shoots out from you. Does it actually come from your finger? Or does it appear like right in front of your finger and go out? Like, how does that work? Anyways, fan site news. We got a shout out for our 39th episode, 439th episode for new players. Damsels of DDO went to search and rescue. DDO Gamer celebrated the Chronicle hitting 200. Ginger's Price ran Waterworks at level 5 on Elite. Even Note flagged for Thunderhome and moved her Sunday night stream. And Gaming SF dipped back into the DDO waters. Welcome back. It's always fun to hear people coming back. Let's see. Little Bell made some forum updates. You can check out some of the work she's done. And she was on the weekly Wednesday live stream a couple weeks ago, too, which is pretty awesome. The 202nd Chronicle. This is the current one. We got a shout-out for interviewing Severlin, No Worries, Steelstar, and Cordovan with our last week's episode, Ask the Devs. A lot of fun. Thank you again to the devs for doing that with us. A lot of fun conversation went on there. Everything from stuff in Update 32 to some long-term talk about tieflings and Azamar and kobolds as a player race, which was kind of fun and exciting to talk about.
Yeah, that was a really good episode that you did. And
thanks.
It was great to see Seb being so chatty as well.
He's pretty easy to be chatty.
Yes, he is.
I've also wondered, if Jerry is maybe spiking his drink a little bit at lunch before the interviews or something.
That very could be. I never thought about that, but yeah.
But no, it's great to have him on. He's always fun, and I really like how open they are about some of the stuff, and really they did a great job and gave us a lot of information. And it's very nice of them to take some time out of their day to do that. Let's see, Fridays on Ice is the newest show on DDO Stream. It's on Friday night starting at 10 o'clock Eastern. The guild for the week, Mortal Flesh, is a small Thelanis-based guild looking for new members. This group of 5 players gets together regularly with multiple characters and would love to find a couple people to run with. So it's a very, very small guild, only 5 people. Comment for the week, how do you come up with your character names? I was actually shocked by this question because it's actually a question I would think that he would have used before. If you got to come up with a question every week for 202 weeks, not sure why that's something to come up for. So, Draculetta, how do you come up with your character names?
Well, this is going to be a shock to nobody, probably. But 95% of my character names are somehow vampiric in nature. I know, shock, right?
Yep.
But then I am starting on the gnomes I make. They have gnome in their name. Like I have Gnomageddon, which I'm surprised I actually was able to get. And then I have like Dracu-gnome, so that's still kind of got the vampire thing in it, plus the gnome thing. So, but yeah, pretty much they are vampiric in nature, related somehow. Be it like some obscure character from a book or a movie or something like that.
I'm actually notoriously bad at character names. Even when I was like as a DM, you're like, "What's the like? I want to go talk to this guy. Hi, what's your name?" And I'm like,
Bob.
"Somebody give me a name, quick!"
Yeah.
Like I was really bad. Like when I make a new character, like I can build a character in DDO, or even in pen and paper. Like I can build a character pretty dang quick, just from scratch if I need to. Sometimes it takes a little more time when I'm thinking about it, but I can build a character in 5 minutes in DDO or in pen and paper easily. And then it always takes me like 20 minutes to get if I need a new name, to get a name for my character. Most of my character names actually come from the Bible. They're Bible characters. Shamgar being a notable one in Judges. He slays 600 people with an ox goad. So it's just right, and they usually have something to do with what that character is kind of built around. Because my characters, I don't tend to change when I like. They're all built to be this class, so I don't have to worry about my names changing. But that's where I get my names from. Let's see. Fansite news for the week. Damsels of DDO ran Sins of Attrition. DDO Players News discussed the latest on Lemania and more. That was, I think it would have been 2 shows ago.
Yes.
When these come out. You kind of are in that really awkward phase where you record your show, like you do your live show, and then the next day the Chronicle comes out, and then the next day your show comes out.
Yeah, that's why, because I know a lot of people always ask me, it's like, well, why does it always say click here to see it when the show is published on Wednesday? And I'm like, some behind the scenes baseball for you here. Once we get done recording the show and I actually come up with a name and I get the post ready to go out, I have to email Jerry the link to it. So the link, when I email, is actually not active because the link won't go up until Wednesday. So, yeah, it is very awkward, but that seems to work.
It's a good workaround. Otherwise, you have to wait
a
week. So
I just always have to remember to email him, which a couple weeks I had forgotten. So we weren't in the Chronicle, but that's why.
Voodoo Spice previewed Kenneth crafting on Lemania. It's a great video, and it was notable that it did a really good job of kind of showing you the Kenneth crafting, but it also was kind of off the cuff, so we had a lot of fun little stuff going on with it. And some of his thoughts on the video as well.
He makes such good videos anyway, too. I highly recommend you subscribe to his YouTube channel if you are not.
Yeah. Let's see, Dido Gamer looked at Kenneth crafting as well. Even prepared to reincarnate and update the look of her blog. She reincarnated her blog. Well done. City prepares for a journey between worlds as well. And let's see. Other videos, we'll give a shout out to Shu Cobbles, the Dwarf Barbarian. He cobbles other things as well. His show is actually Shu Cobbles a Blank. And this was, I think it's 6th episode on Dwarf Barbarian. I was a little confused by his numbering system because it was like Dwarf Barbarian 6.1 or something like that. A little weird. Let's see, blogs this week. City Plays DDO. We talked about his your first character and gave some new player advice, so we'll link to that as well. Even Note talked about XP runs. Tactilicious and Craftlicious had an interesting little post. It's titled "What's in a Good Quest." It was really talking about why he thinks Haunted Halls is a good quest and why he thinks Temple of Elemental Evil is not a good quest, or at least not as good as Haunted Halls. And the Damsels of DDO interviewed Severlin and Cordovan, which was also in their Bastion of Power episode from last week, which I unfortunately haven't gotten a chance to listen to. But I'm looking forward to it greatly, and I'm sure it's a fantastic job because those ladies always do a great job. DDO Splat is still going on Tuesdays. That's where I play with Lessa and some other folks playing a variant of permadeath
I like how you say it's a variant of
Well, we
permadeath.
changed the rules because we ended up in Korthos too much.
And who would want that?
We're a little too aggressive for permadeath. Really, that's what it comes down to. It's still a lot of
It,
fun.
it's so enjoyable to watch, though.
The last couple of weeks we've been struggling to get a full party together. So we lost a couple of folks, and there's been some scheduling snafus, and it's the summer and all that kind of stuff. So, but we're still playing and still having fun with it. Other general gaming news. I'm gonna link to Massively Overpowered's article on "Do you care about lore?" Talking about in your games. Do you care about lore? Draculetta, do you care about lore?
Yes and no. It personally, for me, it depends on the game.
Makes sense.
Because there's some games it's like you can tell if I think I care about it more if the game was built around the lore, because there are some games that you can just tell they're like, oh yeah, we have to come up with some stupid lore for this game, so we're just gonna throw something out there. And then there's other games to where you can tell that okay, the game was built around the lore and they care about it. So it depends.
I would say DDO is like the kind of that's about how much I care about the lore. I don't lore is not really a big thing for me, but I appreciate good story arcs. And I like that DDO's lore is very consistent with
Yes.
itself. But it also does a good job of accepting lore from other places, whether you realize it or not. But really, at the end of the day, it doesn't impact the game at all, on how you're playing it. It might impact your enjoyment of the game and your appreciation of details, but it's not like if you don't understand the lore, it doesn't impact your gameplay at all. Or if you don't care about the lore, it doesn't impact it, and I like that. Right? Like a little window dressing is kind of what I like in my lore. So, lightning posts, and again, 2 weeks of lightning posts, so we got a little bit, and the commenters have been a little chatty, which is great. I love it. So this one's from Philip. This was in our new player episode. I think a reason many players mention what they're looking for well before the chest is loot shows up in party chat by default. So if one mentions it in chat at the chest rather than verbally, it's likely whatever they said will be buried by random loot polls. Still, I agree it's a faux pas for the I'm looking for X to be one's greeting. Something I want to say about this really quick. If you've got your multiple chat tabs, one thing that I really like to do is I go to my party tab and I take loot out of it. I leave loot in my general tab, which has pretty much everything in it anyways. But then I take pretty much everything out of like the guild tab and the party tab, and I make a tab for my user chats so that if something went, especially when that loot is scrolling by, I can flip to those other tabs and read the conversation that was going on in whatever chat it was in, which is a good one to do it. But yeah, I don't mind, and I can explain a little more. I don't mind when people say, as we're coming after the chest or a little bit before, my issue is we're still outside the raid. It's like 20 minutes at least to finish the raid, and they're asking for, hey, I'm looking for this from the raid. I'm like, I'm not going to remember in 20 minutes. Let's see. Incense Snoma said, I would disagree with the first tip, creating custom characters. A newbie should go with a path-based character to begin with until they learn the system and how stats and skills work. I would also recommend running either a rogue or a melee for the first 2 or 3 characters. The rogue will force them to go slower, forcing them to learn more aspects of the game. I think you go back and forth on the character paths. Have you built a character from the path, Draculetta?
Yes, I have.
What was your experience with that?
Going back to when I first started, I started out with the path, and it seemed like it was okay, but it just seemed a little off to me. But now I know the game a little more, and then I do a custom. I can see why it seemed a little off to me, because there's some really weird, odd choices they make, I think, at times. That it's like, you probably should have done this instead of that. So, but I think it will give you, if you stick with the path base for maybe your first character, it might give you to get to know the mechanics of the game and get to know the class a little bit, and then maybe you can branch out and create your own.
Yeah, I never built anything off a path because by the time they introduced them, most of my characters were, one, already built, and two, I had a really deep knowledge of what you can do with characters. So the thing I like about paths is, if you're a new character, I think I probably should have spoken up on this. If you're a new person, new player, don't be afraid to take a path to get past the character creation, because that can be a really daunting thing. And I think the reason why they have the paths is so people don't, try the game out and then they can't figure out the character creation, that they just give up. So if you want to just get in and start playing the game, it's a great way to do it. And then you can meet people and they can refer you to builds, and you can find builds on the forum that you can tweak it. Really, at the end of the day, if you're having fun, it doesn't really matter what what build you're playing.
Exactly.
And also in the grand scheme of things, with a couple of notable exceptions, generally speaking, your character build is not going to really. Your character build is not going to make being bad is not going to make you a better or worse player. Player skill still is a large part of this game. Now, granted, a lot of that is involved with building a character, but you can play a path character well. So, don't be afraid to take a path. As far as a rogue, I generally don't recommend it as your first character unless you really want to be a rogue, just because there's a lot more things going on and a lot more skills you have to learn quickly and how to do, or you get, because people are looking at you to do the traps. It's also can be, you're going to need to get some trapping gear, and it's actually a little surprising how fast you need to acquire trapping gear to stay relevant as a trapper, particularly if you're running elite.
I would think as a new character, being a rogue, that'd be a lot of pressure.
It's a little tricky. There's more gear that's more essential more quickly, because especially those low level elite ones, if you don't have action boost, if you're going to be a rogue, get the action boost for skills. Particularly if you're newer and you don't have gear, but it can be hard to get the gear that you need to run, to basically run your quote level with bravery bonus streak people. If you just don't have any gear, the traps are going to be hard for you for a little while. Usually, I think it's like the first 5 to 7 levels that's true, and then you kind of catch up a little bit, and then like when you get into legendary, again, if you don't have some really good gear, it can be hard to get some of those traps. So you're going to run into the gear problem. It's also, I would say, if you're going to be a melee rogue, it's going to take a better player to have success surviving later in the game, even somewhat earlier in the game. If you're a mechanic and shooting things, that's another story entirely. But so just be aware of that if you're going to make a rogue as your first character. Won't say you shouldn't do it, but it's not unless you really want to be that style of character, I wouldn't recommend it for your first character. Make something simpler that isn't a critical party role, that you can learn how the game works first. Fuzzy Duck wrote in, while he agrees about steering clear of too often fighting melee for first for most classes, I'd actually suggest first character as a ranger, since they're really rather hard to get badly wrong. Almost all the weapon feats they want come for free as class features. They get some capability for self-healing, and they switch effectively between melee and range, so you can try out 2 play styles easily. That's actually really good advice. So I really wanted to highlight that. That's a great, fantastic case for being a ranger as a first character. So there you go. You mentioned also another kiting approach that he's had success with when short manning is have a party member aggro a group of mobs and kite them. Then when they're following them along in a nice straight line, open up with improved precise shot and various special attacks. It's always a great tactic. About navigation, and I don't know how we didn't actually mention this. On the map, the 4 cardinal points on a compass are called north, south, east, and west. It's a very easy and clear way to communicate. And on your map, up is north, and then you just go around. Down is south, east to the right, as you're looking at the screen, and left is west. Important thing about navigation, which we didn't mention that when we should have. He also mentioned that don't forget your weekly freebie from the store. Sometimes there's stuff that will be looked down on by more experienced players, but they're usually at least situationally useful items, particularly for new players, and absolutely true. He said, keep a half an eye on the general chat when you're less busy, as it's fairly common to see people giving stuff away. Although I don't tend to see that as much anymore. Although I don't tend to spend as much time in the harbor and marketplace as I used to do. Let's see. He has a small note about the I want X loot thing. If you're a person who created the group and you're after a specific thing, stick that in the LFM with looking for X. Since it's upfront and honest, it can be good for others who want a different item, boosting the chance you both get what you want. Which is not a bad option. Although I will say, if I'm also looking for that, I may not join that group, or I may just join that group and not care. I probably ignore that more than anything else, but it's something to consider. Amberstein said there was a brief discussion on collectibles as it relates to kind of crafting, but he thinks a full discussion will be a welcome topic. It's in the plans. Someone said there wasn't much value in the things you can turn them in for, but he disagrees. He crafted up to 2 full stacks of elixirs of lesser healing and uses them for TR runs. You can make better ones, but of course they require a higher tier of collectibles, which don't accumulate in such huge numbers. You can also play roulette, trading them in for augments. I don't really like doing that personally, because the augments aren't... They're very low-level augments anyways. Or you can spend ISO shards too to get some of those. But again, other than like feather falling, there's not any of those that I would be interested in doing that for. And feather falling is kind of ubiquitous now. We had a brief discussion about not buying gear from the store. Unless he missed it, he didn't hear what he believes is the best piece of advice to a new player regarding the store. Never buy turbine points unless it's on sale, and never buy anything from the store unless it's also on sale. Make your dollars work for you, both coming and going. Great advice. We didn't mention it. I will say that sometimes there's just things that you want to buy because you need to buy it, and the timing doesn't work out. But yeah, stuff goes on sale pretty regularly these days too. And if you want to try and figure out what might be going on sale, here's a cool little thing you could do. Look at the back issues of DDOcast, and you can, scroll through to the news section and hear what's on sale. Those sales are actually repetitive. You can also look at our calendar. You can go look at the store sales on the calendar. They're basically on a cycle, so they don't go in order, successive order all the time, but it gives you an idea what goes on sale, when it goes on sale, and how often it goes on sale. He also said that character appearance is important to him. He writes down the selections for appearance on creation and then sets them the same after every TR. And once he buys cosmetics for a character, they become part of their look forever. Let's see. Idle Bigot said, I hate people that kite for no reason. Even on my ranged characters and casters, I rarely kite unless it's a difficult elite quest and I know where to go and how to escape. He knows he can survive a few hits on all of his characters and he can't stress enough how useful those aggro decrease enhancements are. And I will... Absolutely, aggro decrease enhancements are fantastic. Anytime you can get an aggro decrease, which is basically if you're not meant to be a tank, if you can get that, get that. Works really great for rogues too, because they tend to be pretty squishy. And Anonymous wrote in regarding our wizard spell selection episode. He said, level 1 Nyax Cold Ray. It's a one-shot, one kill as long as you keep up your DCs and damage bonuses and metamagics. Or sniping for really cheap, which is a good tip as well. It will get to a point where it won't be as effective anymore, but early levels, yeah, if your DC is high, it'll be really effective. Our survey question for the week, Brian from Argo asks, where do gray ooze babies come from? Drac, where do gray baby oozes come from?
You don't want to know.
Well, when an ooze meets a sharp object.
That's right. They fall in love.
Yeah. So there you go.
That's a funny question.
It's a funny question. I like those questions. It's a good one to just kind of throw out there really quick for today. So with that, we're going to close up the show here. Anything you want to say before we go out, Drac? Anything else you want to... I know you already kind of plugged DDO Players News, but anything else you want to plug in here?
Not really. Just like I said, the 100th episode's coming up. We're gonna have giveaways, so stay tuned for that. Some really good giveaways too.
Yeah, giveaways are always fun. Who doesn't like free stuff?
Exactly, it's free.
Yeah. So thanks for listening to the show, particularly the folks that were in the chat room today. And thanks to Draculetta for joining me today and helping me hold down the fort this weekend. Thanks to all the other contributors for DDOcast. There's a bunch of folks that have helped. Some past and present. Some of them don't help as much anymore or have moved on to other things and other games and other things in life. I just want to give a shout-out for all. I always give them a shout-out because it helps me do this show. We were talking about before we started the show that sometimes it's hard to do a show every week, or mostly every week. But I have a lot of help doing that, and I like to give them a shout out for that and thank them. Also, thank you to Turbine and Wizards for making DDO, and thank you to Cyber for hosting the podcast. You can hit us up at DDOcast.com for show notes, MP3s, our calendar, previous shows, swag, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be part of the show, if you have a comment on this episode, or any episode, or if you have a question you'd like to hear us answer, like where did gray baby oozes come from, or a question you'd like to hear us debate on one of our debate episodes, or if you just want to say hi, leave a comment, email me at ddocast@gmail.com. My list of questions is running low, so I am looking for more. I'm always looking for more. And if you have an idea for a topic for a show, I'd love to hear that too. You can also find us on social media. Best place for me is at DDOcast. Drac, where can they find you?
You can find me at DDOplayers.com, and if you want to follow my personal Twitter, it is at Draculetta_72.
And there is a Twitter account for Players News as well, and Players Alliance, I believe, as well.
Yeah, it's at Players Ally, and then DDO Players News is at DDO Players.
There you go. Our closing tip for the week comes from Lavlove on Galanda. Save your daily dice XP gems for when you TR. Nice piece of advice. Good way to use those. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your tests level appropriate. Have fun, and don't forget to get ready for Kranith crafting updates. Start hoarding those collectibles.